Welcome back, everybody, to the ROI Online Podcast. And today, I'm proud for you to meet Eliot Marshall. Now, Eliot is a former mixed martial artist. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a business owner. He co-owns 7 training centers, Easton Training Centers in Denver. And he's also the author of a book called The Gospel of Fire. And he has a podcast by the same name. Eliot, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Steve, thanks for having me on, man.
I'm so this is interesting. I love this because I watch those MMA fights and I think about all the training and the heart put into the preparation of a fight. They walk out and they've got people yelling for them or against them, and they go out into the ring and publicly they put everything out there, and they may win or they may get beat down, and then they show up for the next one. That's fascinating to me. Talk to me about why anyone would be crazy enough to put their stuff out there like that.
Because there's something wrong with us. We all joke about it, right? Like before a fight, they do you have to get a doctor's exam, you know, and they ask in the doctor's exam, is the person mentally stable? Well, man, the answer is no. No, we're not mentally stable, bro. We want to get into a locked cage and fight, you know? So, why? Homie, there ain't nothing that will make you as present in your life as a life or death situation with you and somebody else where your life is on the line. There's no feeling like it in the world. Like that, like you can't mimic it. I haven't had it since, you know, I'll probably, I don't know how else to do it, you know?
So what makes someone walking down the street one day, you're bullied as a kid,
Yeah.
You're walking down the streets one day, I don't know, why do you walk into some place and sign up to have your be slapped around by a bunch of guys that know way more than you?
So for my whole life, the only place that I ever fit in was at a martial arts academy, you know? So since I was 6 years old, that was like my home. And then, right when the UFC came out in the early 90s, I saw it. And then, you know, I just said I was going to do it, but I was a kid. I was a teenager, you know, and everyone's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I just kept saying that I was going to do it. And then I got good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then one day, you know, I mean, this is obviously the short end of it. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time, that you couldn't make any money competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like zero. And, you know, but I was doing it, training all day, working at a bar at night, you know, like I wouldn't say going nowhere because I was getting very good at Jiu-Jitsu, but as far as like my life trajectory, going nowhere. I was married. I was getting out of the shower, getting ready to get into bed. And my wife looks at me. She goes, so, yeah, let's either fight because that's what you said you're going to do, or let's get a job. And the job sounded so terrible to me.
Wow. You know, I think about, you know, in my past, I had a hard time getting people to hire me, and the ones that did, the horse would die out from under me. And I kept thinking it was nagging me that I should start my own business, which is very similar to what you're just talking about. It's like, where's my life going? Why have I been doing all I'm doing? And the folks that are listening to this, they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs, but yet that same conversation happens.
So yeah, I'm sure. And since I started martial arts when I was 6 years old, I said that like I always wanted to have my own school someday. Like it was my dream. And I knew that after fighting, I was going to have my own school someday, because fighting only, like a professional fighting career doesn't last very long, you know? Even if I became the champion, I was going to have my own school. So like that, like the business end of it was always on the horizon for me as well. So, yeah, I don't know what it was. I don't know why I am the way I am. I can't tell you. Like, I don't like working for people. I don't like bosses. I try not to be one. You know, everyone in my company tries not to be one. And I don't even like to say my company, like, because it's not mine. And if we're going to talk about like the business end of things here, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not yours. It's yours, but it's not, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like a person. Like, they're my kids, but I can't own them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's my wife, but she's her own being, you know? Like, she's not mine. You know, she's mine in a sense, right? Like,
Right.
but your business and our employees, they're ours. You know, they're ours, from me all the way at the top to the janitor who trades in tuition to clean my floors, right? Like the mats.
Yeah.
So it was a change in, when it comes to business, it was a change in perspective in my life that made me see this.
Awesome. So you see it as a responsibility that it's your job to protect the environment for these people to grow and develop.
I'm at the front,
Yeah.
but the all the people, they're only like a millimeter behind me,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not like I'm like way out here and untouchable, you
Right.
know? Like, everyone, like, I'm in the front because I like this, you know, I'm a fighter. I'm going to die on my shield,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why. But yeah, I love it, man. Fuck, like, sorry, I curse. Am I allowed to curse or not? Sorry.
My mom listens, but she's
Okay.
heard that word before.
Okay, cool. My mom listens and tells me not to curse. So um I don't know, man. I love people in martial arts so much that to be able for me to connect the two has been, outside of children, you know, and marriage and a family, has been the greatest endeavor of my life.
So it's weird to think that this person that gets in a ring to just knock the snot out of the other guy can be so aligned to care and for and lead people. How does that connect?
My students saved my life, man. You know, I in 2016, I had what I like to call a mental breakdown slash spiritual awakening,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and all I could get myself to do was show up to the school to teach because I was losing it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And my two general managers at the time, uh, I mean, I was crying every night. Like, I would take sleeping pills that, you know, I would want them to work within 5 minutes. Um, there's that, yeah, that doesn't happen. And then I'd have a panic attack 5 minutes later. And I'd run down to my basement. I'd freak out all night. And these guys, man, along with a couple other people that, you know, they would stay out, like, dude, sometimes all night long. I mean, we just didn't sleep. They just talked to me on the phone, like, to make sure I was okay. Um, and then, you know, I just kept showing up to the school to teach, and people kept showing up to take the class more and more, right? But I'd been teaching for a while now. This wasn't new. Like, the business wasn't new. It's 4 or 5 years, you know, it's established, you know? And I was just like, okay, I just got to give the best class possible. I just got to give the best class, you know, like, just do that. And then you can go home and then you can freak out, you know? And, that, and them showing up, they didn't know it, right? But them showing up, like, to me, it felt like they cared and loved about me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were there for me. They were there to be like, yo, Eliot's struggling, because everyone knew, you know, like,
Everyone
Eliot's
knows.
struggling, and we're going to show up for this hour to make sure he's okay. And you know, like, we talked about it like a year ago, me and those two guys, you know, that were all up on the phone with me. That's when, like, the whole business took off a little bit and changed. Like, we saw in the saving of me,
Mm-hmm.
right? We saw how important the connection between people was. Like, and not like we didn't see it before, right? Like, it was good before, but like, this was like like the like, you know, when you hit the NOS button on, like, in the Fast and the Furious,
Yeah.
this was the NOS.
So, you know, when I watch your interviews with the other guys that have been in the ring, that have
Mm-hmm.
done what you've done, your face lights up when you guys connect on this experience that no one else would understand.
Oh yeah.
And so even though you had this business, this thing that's bigger than you with these two guys, you went through a similar crucible with them, no?
Yeah. So there ain't nothing like fighting in the whole world, man. You know, as far if we're going to talk about it, like, there's a lot of things that are hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lot of things that are hard, but unless you get good with dying, with what you're about to go do, because that's what you got to do to fight. You got to get good with dying. You know, and then the people that go through that with you, that's what it is. You know, you'll never forget them. They're a part of you for the rest of your life, no matter how it ends. And everybody that you fought, everyone that you stood in that cage or that ring with, they're a part of you forever. Like they have a piece of you, and you have a piece of them. You know, it's art. It's a very beautiful thing. I know it looks violent, but you know, I'm kind of a stoic Buddhist, I would say, is what I am. That, you know, I don't know what. You know, my mom's a Jew that her parents survived the Holocaust, and my dad's black. There ain't many like me, you know. So I don't know what the hell I am, bro. There's just something. There's something where, you know, it's you, them, and God. And I don't really like say God in the sense that everyone thinks of it as, you know, but you guys are there together.
When you say dying, you got to get comfortable with dying.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Describe it for a guy like me. I die sometimes in running a business or just laid it out on the line, but failed.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean, dying?
So dying, I'm talking about really dying.
Yeah.
Right. I'm talking about you have to get good. So everyone can understand the notion of getting in a fight, right? Or everyone either has been in one or has almost been in one. Let me put a date and a time and an opponent on that where you know you have to show up. That's so, you know, and you know it could be 15 minutes long or 25 minutes long, depending on if it's a title fight. You got to get good with it. Like, you have to do whatever you have to do to when you walk in there. And it might, if that means it's the last 15 minutes of your life, then it's the last 15 minutes of your life. Like that is the preparation. And you have to realize that your life, it's not futile, but you could leave it at any point, right? You could always leave life at any point. So what better one than this one, man? You know?
How do you prepare? How do you prepare to lay everything on the line over and over?
You have to
again?
break. You have to break in the preparation. You have to have died in preparation. You have to think, I can't do this anymore. And then once you think you can't, once you break the person, you build them back up so that they know that they can do it, that they can overcome. Because the mind, like, it's your mind that breaks. Your body doesn't break. Your mind is what goes, I can't do this. You know, and then and here's the people thing again. This is why you need a camp. This is why you need a team. This is why you need a good trainer. Mm-hmm. They pick you up and they say, oh, yes, you can. Right? They go, oh, yes, you can. One more round. Right? Give me 1 more minute. Give me 10 more seconds. And then when you can do that, the line of once you do it, right? When you think you couldn't, you're done. You're broken. You're dead. The line of what you can do just got pushed back. And then it gets pushed back. And then it gets pushed back. So it's never ending. Just like in your business, what you think you're capable of achieving. You know, oh, okay, I want to get to $100,000 in revenue. Fuck yeah, that would be amazing, right? And then you're stuck at 80,000. You know, and then boom, oh, and you see it. You see a light. You're like, oh my God, look at that. Or podcasting, right? Mm-hmm. You know, okay, I get 1,000 downloads a month. God, that's amazing. 1,000 downloads. That's great. I'm never going to get to 10,000. I'm never going to get to 4,000. Oh my God, holy shit, here I am, you know? And then the line gets pushed back. But now there's a double-edged sword to that line, like as far as like business goes, right? Because then you start chasing that high. Mm-hmm. right? You start chasing that. Oh shit, I'm the man. I'm at 10,000, right? Oh, how many downloads? How many? And you start to attach yourself to that, right? It's the yin and the yang of everything. You have to be able to chase a goal, but know that that's not you.
So let's talk about after a loss, one of your losses.
Yeah.
How do you do a healthy self-evaluation of assessment of what you did right and what you did wrong? And how do you trust yourself that you're doing it healthy, or being too hard on yourself, or not being hard enough?
Talking about fighting?
Just about how do you handle that conversation in your head?
Well, you drink a lot with fighting, and you shouldn't because you're probably concussed. You cry.
Yeah.
You don't sleep. With fighting, it's the darkest cloud you've ever had over your head. You've never, it's like someone died. It's literally like someone died. It's very hard to get away from. You have some loving, you get up, man. You just get up. You just get up and fight again. You just get up. You walk back in the gym. Like, I don't know what else to say. And I don't know if it's something innate in us that we do it, but yeah, as far as business goes, it's so easy for me after fighting, I have to say, like, and not even after fighting, it's so easy for me because I'm not stuck and trapped in the hell of my own mind anymore. Like, and that's the worst place, right? Like when I go back to my 2016 when I broke down, there was no reason, man. Like, it wasn't like the business was failing. It wasn't like my wife was leaving me. None of my kids were sick. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just straight anxiety. Straight like, yo, this devil that you have been beaten down. Oh, he ain't going anywhere right now. He's here. He's going to sit on your shoulder. And he's not going to go anywhere. There was no reason for me. My business was growing, thriving, employees, boom, 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 boom. Nice. Dude, I just gotten back from a 2-week Hawaiian vacation. Like, there's no reason to be up all night crying. So when you can deal with that, like, as far as that, man, everything else it's just quieter,
So was it that you met this competitor or this opponent that you never really fought before, that you didn't know how to prepare for this?
No, it was that I had met him a bunch of times. I had just masked it with fighting. I had masked this competitor with fighting because I gave myself reasons to be nervous and scared, like really scared, like a fight or whatever, and the real demon of my life, what I was really scared of, which was me and who I was, and maybe what a piece of shit I was, or maybe how weak I was, or how no one liked me and no one was going to like me and everyone was going to leave me. And then this is going to get a little dark and deep for a second. My whole life, I was told that Hitler was going to come again because I grew up with Holocaust survivors, so that was happening. No one would be there to help me, and that I would be all alone, right? Because I had no friends growing up, like 2. And so I'd be all alone by myself. So I would, try to scream at how tough I was. That's probably why I went into fighting in the first place, And then when you fight, it's shown that you're like, if you're not the champ, if you don't retire the champ, well, someone fucked you up. So you ain't that tough, right? And here it was. So now you can't run away from it. It's right there. Everyone for the world to see. You can go on Wikipedia and you can look at my record, So now I got to deal with Eliot. So it wasn't an opponent. It was me.
That is our biggest enemy, is ourself.
It's our greatest asset too.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, if you can get away from the flip side, the head, the head and the tails, the yin and the yang, my anxiety, like who I am, it makes me amazing. It makes me amazing, but it's also what makes me fucking terrible.
I love that. There's this quote by Seth Godin who says, you have to give yourself permission. But I think that's the hardest person to get permission to be the person you're supposed to be, is that permission from yourself.
Yeah. People, if you watch people get angry at other people, they don't get angry at other people for shit that they don't do. You get angry and upset with other people because you do the exact same thing, right? Either you do it to yourself, and if you do it to yourself, you are therefore going to project that on to Steve, right? Or to Dave, or to whoever, when they do something that looks like you, because it scares you so much. It scares you so much when you see yourself and where you could go or where you do go sometimes.
I think it's the hardest thing for people to face, is to really do this evaluation of where they need to hold themselves more accountable, or to make a plan. You're saying that you had used that anxiety to hide what your real problem was, the fighting was. How many of us do the same thing? Do you see that in a lot of people? How do you coach them out of that?
You got to love yourself. You got to really, really love yourself. The bad of you too. You have to take time for yourself. You have to give yourself some space for when you do make mistakes, so that you can give other people space when they make mistakes. It helps you love people more. It helps you love people more. Like in a business sense, I was on vacation a couple months ago, and one of my friends, we met a couple, we met a family there, it's actually a funny story. So we met there, we randomly vacationed there once. The next year they were there again, and it wasn't the same time. So we were like, oh, I guess we should be friends. So then we were friends, and now we like meet each other in Hawaii, so we met up, and he was going through this time in his life, and he's a very successful accountant in Canada. And he asked me, he was like, yo, if I laid $100 million in front of you, would you stay here forever? You can't bring your people here. Your schools are done. You can start new schools, do whatever you want. But here's $100 million. He's like, if you had 50, I'm staying, is what he's, I was like, fuck no, man. No fucking way. When I love what it is that I do so much. And I think that came with loving myself for a little bit, and yeah, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't trade what I have now for being the world champ.
I love that. When we say, I believe in the invisible heroes of our time, or entrepreneurs, they're business owners, because they put everything on the line. They risk their family's well-being, their everything, just to try to make a better life for them and our world. But no one sees it publicly or necessarily understands that. So what's your definition between bravery and courage? What's the difference in bravery and courage?
The difference. Well, courage is definitely being afraid and going anyway.
Yeah.
That's courage. It's definitely being afraid and walking. Bravery is the act of doing it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. That's when you're brave. Mm-hmm. Courage is a single thing. I'm showing courage right now. But if I was going to say you are a brave person, you keep fucking walking. Mm-hmm. Like you keep walking into the unknown, and that's what martial arts has taught me. is that the unknown, it's chaos, right? It's such chaos. And we're so afraid of it. But God damn, if you can just calm down, take a breath, feel the chaos, you can navigate it, you know? And even when you can't navigate, if you can just sit in it, and like, you don't got to keep your whole body afloat. It's just your mouth and your nose that has to stay above the water, you know? And that's what it is. Like for me, that's what it is right now, man. I have 7 schools, people, nobody's walking in, closed, mandated by the government, you know? Oh, well. Woe is me? No, fuck you. Oh, I'm being oppressed? No, fuck you. Oh, you're stealing my rights? I mean, maybe all those things are true, but shut the fuck up. I'm sick of it. I don't want to hear it. You know, I don't want to hear it. Take care of work. It is time to lace up the gloves and, you know, get up off the stool. You have been beaten down. It is time to fight. And I'm not saying go scream and yell at your governor, you know, like, or whoever. Like, I don't disagree with your point. It ain't going to get you anywhere. Complaining has never gotten anybody anywhere.
So what are you working on? Right now, everyone's feeling the same thing.
Yeah.
They need to be working on themselves. What is it that you're working on now?
So first and foremost, you always need to work on yourself, you know? So for me, like, my day starts with meditation and gratitude every single day. Every single day, meditation and gratitude. That is where my day always starts. And when I say gratitude is a tough thing, because it's super easy to be gracious when shit's good. Can you be thankful right now? Can you be thankful for COVID? You know, can you be thankful for this time that is a struggle, the good and the bad, the problems? You know, so I wake up, and after I breathe, you know, excuse me, what I say is, I say, thank you for my kids, my wife, my family, my friends, my students, and my problems. You know, I had a friend who just recently died, you know, during COVID here, my age, my best friend from growing up. When I said I had 2 friends, he was one of them.
I'm sorry.
You know, it's okay. I just take some time to be with him during that gratitude. You know, like, I just take a deep breath in, think about him, you know, just enjoy a second with him. So I still get to be with him. Mm-hmm. And then I repeat the 4 agreements, you know.
What are those?
Be impeccable with your word. Take nothing personally. Make no assumptions. Always do your best. And then after that, I say to myself, I am enough. Like, who I am is enough. And then I get up and I just go. I just work. You know, we just we figured out we have virtual. You know, as far as what we're doing. You know, I'm growing my podcast. You know, I put something out every day, Monday through Friday. You know, now I talk to people. I reach out to as many of my employees as I can. You know, I put motivational stuff up for the students, you know, on my podcast platform. So, you know, I'm not going to say this is all like for nothing, you know, or just because, like, you know, I'm trying to grow my platform. But look, man, I put it out. Yo, you can do this. And yeah, I put out my weaknesses. I talk about them. Yeah, sure. I cry. Yeah, 3 nights ago, I didn't sleep. You know, I get scared just like the rest of you. This is what I do when I get scared. You know, so what are you going to do? Sit at home and do nothing?
Right.
You know, you got to fight, man. You got to fucking fight.
You have 2 sons.
I do.
What do you think how do they see you? How do you connect with them on a different level, but you expect of them similar things that you do of the folks that you coach?
You just show it. Don't tell people what to do. Mm-hmm. You know, don't tell people what to do. My kids, you know, like, my dad did it, you know, like, yeah, I cook, I clean, do laundry, mop the floors, cut the grass. What do you want to, I mean, what do you want? Like, you show them how to be a goddamn man, you know, and that does not mean bring home the money, right? Like, that's part of it, you know, that's definitely part of it, but it's not the thing. You know, you show them how to take care of children. You show them how to be soft. You show them how to be hard. You show them how to love. You show them what a good dad looks like by being one. You show them what a good husband looks like, you know. You show the, you know, and then you talk about when you blow it. You know, you show them, hey, look, dad, you know, like the other day we were doing schoolwork, bro. Oh, God, you know, can you congratulate me real fast?
Congratulations.
I graduated first grade again, just in case you were wondering.
I don't know how far I could get right now without remedial.
Bro, first grade is awful because your first grader can't do the online schooling by himself. So you have to sit there and do it with him. It was awful. It was so fucking terrible. But anyway, I have a fourth grader as well. And man, my fourth grader, he's my mini. He is me on steroids. He does everything that I can do better, and the not so skillful parts of me, he has all of them too. Anxiety, and you know, so like he's my mini. Like most kids want their moms, right? At a young age, he doesn't like I don't want to say he doesn't want her, right? But like when it gets really, really dark for him, it's dad. Where is my dad? So I have to be super cautious with him, you know, because he what he does, how he looks at me is I can't be on a higher pedestal, you know? So I have to really be cautious with how I talk to him and, you know, and all that stuff. So the other day we were doing math and I got so frustrated, and then I was yelling. I was mad at him. And then I was like, God damn it, I'm being an asshole. Look, I'm yelling at you, you know? So I had to let him see that. I had to let him know that I blew it, you know? And then I gave him a hug and I said, my bad. And he goes, it's all right, Dad. And he's crying, you know, like, because the math is frustrating, and then his dad yelled at, you know, so I just let him see it. And then we talked about it afterwards, like, yo, that is not how to do it, dude. Not on your end. Look, you're 10, you know, like, yeah, I agree. You shouldn't have cried, you know, like there's no reason to cry right there, but I'm the damn adult, you know? So you have to let him know. You have to let him know that you're going to mess up, and then you're going to walk forward from it. You're human. Don't hold yourself to perfection.
You talk about being vulnerable. You know, that second chapter of your book where you're talking about this fight you were having to show up for, that you had mentally given up.
I can explain it, you know, if you want. Like, so I got beat up. I took a fight on 10 days notice. I wasn't ready. The fight before, and I was checked out in the fight before. Like, man, like, I had some bad luck. I got poked in the eye, so I couldn't see as well, but I don't know that would have mattered. I was losing that fight, you know? And I let the eye poke mask what was really going on in that last fight. I knew I had quit. And this is like the worst dishonor in the world. You don't fucking quit in a fight, you know, but I knew I had. So man, it was an awful time, you know? So then you get your next fight. And this goes back to the question you asked earlier, man. The day of the fight, the day of the next fight, I was tripping, crying, you know, like so scared. I wasn't scared of the fight itself. I was scared that I was going to quit again, you know? Because I had never quit before like that. So, you know, I was sitting there crying in the hotel room, and my wife, she goes, hey, she's never seen me like this. It's like an hour of me fucking crying. She's like rubbing my head, trying to help me, you know, not what you want to be doing before a fight. Right. And she goes, why don't you just walk out there, take the first punch, fall down, cover your head, you know, like get beat up for 10 more seconds. You might as well take the 30 grand. You're here, you know, like, don't get hurt too bad. That first punch is going to be like a jab, you know? So, and then like, that was what the plan became in my head. I was like, done. you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that got me to the fight. Jab came, punched me in the face, stumbled backwards a little bit. I was like, man, fuck this. Let's go. Had the best fight of my life.
You call it the best fight of your life because you saw this part of you step up when you didn't expect it.
I was fighting probably one of the best opponents I've ever fought.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most dangerous. And I was able to harness a moment. You know, every once in a while you get to, it happens. You know, it happens to really just let all of you be expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it came in the third round. You know, I got 5 minutes of full expression of who Eliot Marshall was as a fighter.
Beautiful. You lost the fight by the judge.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Before the fight.
But you won.
Yeah.
Because of that battle that was going on in your head.
I conquered myself. I really conquered myself. Like, not even conquered. I accepted myself.
Yeah.
I accepted who I was, you know, and I accepted that this could be the last 5 minutes that I ever get to express Eliot Marshall, the UFC fighter. And it was, but I got to show it. Got lucky, you know, I got lucky.
How do you business is full of negotiations.
Yeah.
What do you learn in what your history is of how do you read your opponent? How do you look through bluff? How do you negotiate that?
Can I grab something real fast? I'll come right back.
Yeah.
You see this? This is Buddha, right?
Right.
Look how big these ears are.
Yeah.
Listen, man. Listen with the intent of listening and not in the intent of responding. That's why Buddha had big ears, you know, so they say, so that you could listen really well and you could hear somebody. And when you do that, you know, there's always two perspectives to a story or to anything. Maybe many more, right? There's many perspectives, but if it's you and I talking, there's two. There's yours and there's mine. Whose is the most important? For me, it's you. You know, if we're going through a negotiation. But if I can't understand what it is that you want,
Mm-hmm.
I can scream what I want all day. And it's not even what you want, I guess. It's what you need. You know, what do you need? Why are you saying this? You know, just think about like, are you married?
As good as, yes.
You know, yeah. Just think like, what does your spouse need? Why is she screaming at me right now, calling me a fucking piece of shit asshole? Not that mine does that, right? But we're going to take the worst end of it.
Mm-hmm.
She must have a need that's not being met, which is making her feel a certain way, you know? So if I can address if I can address her need, and if I can express things when it's my turn to speak, and I have a need for this, you know, now we can actually talk rather than negotiate or argue or win the negotiation or lose the negotiation. What if we can both win? What if we can both come out of this with man, I really like that guy, Steve. That went really, really well, man. You know, I really wish the best for him and how things go for him moving forward. And maybe I'm lucky because I carry a big fucking stick, you know, like behind all that. Maybe I am, you know, but I try not to fall back on that. You know, everyone looks at me like, yo, that dude might fuck me up. Right. So for me, the way I speak is so important, you know, and that's why, you know, number one on the 4 agreements, be impeccable with my word, you know, and it's a book. So I didn't make those up, you know, it's called the 4 agreements. It's so important for me because everyone looks at me, 250, 260 pound UFC fighter. They sit down at a table with me and they're like, fuck, this goes bad. I don't want that. You know, I want like, man, that guy was, God, I really enjoyed my time with him.
So you get interviewed a lot, Elliot. I'm curious if uh, I'm curious at what question you never get asked that you wish
Oh,
people
wow.
would ask you that deep question. And I'm asking you because I think you're deep enough and that's where you're coming from right now. I'm just fairly interested in that answer.
I wish people could really understand, one, how scared I am,
Mm,
you know? Uh, I, I am deeply afraid. And that is a fight for me every day. You know, it is a fight for me. And two, uh, and I work on that. You know, like I said, every day I work on that.
Scared of what?
Being alone. I'm
Mm,
so afraid of it. I'm so afraid to be alone. You know, and not like I need to have a party. It's not that, right? I don't need a lot of people around me. But I guess like so my childhood was I had great parents. Like when I say I had a shitty childhood, it had nothing to do with my parents or needing anything. It was a different kind of shitty, you know. I had no buddy, you know. I had no buddy, and I spent a lot of time with Holocaust survivors, man. You
mm,
know, and my dad's African American, and he grew up in the civil rights movement.
mhm.
You know, during civil rights, so it was a lot of fear. You could feel it. You couldn't enter the house of my grandparents without feeling what death was like, what suffering, what real suffering was like. So, and I mean, I think I was just born with it from them, you know. Uh, so it was, and then it kind of came true, you know. Like I moved to a town where we didn't fit in at all. You know, it was the 80s. There weren't many interracial couples. There weren't many mixed marriages like that, religious wise, and we just were weirdos. You know, and I mean, lunchtime's normally the best time for kids at school, right? Well, shit, man, I sat by myself. You know, I
Wow.
walked through the halls by myself. So uh, that hurts, right?
Mm,
That hurts
mhm.
greatly as a child. You know, and there's nothing your parents can do. You know, there's not my parents can't help me. Like they loved me so much. Everyone, my family members, they loved me so much, you know? And like, man, and like that's not my life now. But to this day, like when I have a party and if I say it's 3 o'clock that we're showing that the party starts, I get nervous that people aren't gonna come because that's what happened to me, you know?
And number two, I interrupted you.
Oh, I love people so much, man. If people could, you know, my people, I love you so much, you know? Like my wife can't understand it. My wife can't understand why it's so important for me, like on a
Mhm.
normal Tuesday, Thursday, which is when I teach, you know, why I won't take a day off. She can't, you know, I won't take a day off because God damn, it's amazing. Like seeing my people, you know, and I will put the possessive mind on that because they're my like, you know, like those are my people. Like man, I love it. I love it so fucking much. And I love my people. And not like on a superficial, like, hey, I love you, bro. You know, like they saved my life. You know, they saved my life. So I owe them everything, you know? And I don't know. Like my super tight friends, it's not that they would die for me, right? And it's not that I would die for them because that shit's easy. It's over. It's they would kill somebody for me, you know, and that's a lot harder because if you kill somebody, you gotta live with that for the rest of your life. And I know that sounds kind of dark, but you know, what is it?
So you put yourself out and you really put yourself out there vulnerable. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm scared and I love you,
Yeah.
but you open yourself up to be betrayed sometimes.
That's the hard part because it happens,
I know,
right? It
right?
happens. The hard part is to do it again.
Exactly.
You know, it's so fucking hard for us, especially in business, right? You make a
Yeah.
relationship, you know, and then you get burnt, you know, and
Mhm.
you're like, never again. And maybe never again like that,
That.
right? Maybe, you know, maybe never again like that. But if you don't get burnt again, you're being a fucking pussy, you know, because you're taking no risk. And I shouldn't say pussy because it really should be testicle, because you flick those things and we cry like a baby, right? And they push babies out of there. So anyway, yeah, man, you know, like if you're not getting burnt, what are you doing?
That's what it takes to be successful. You still have to walk into that situation knowing that that rug can be pulled out from under you, but you have to try.
Did you watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan?
No.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, it was about basketball, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about basketball. And there's this one part where they were talking about, you know, the whole team, they were talking about making the last shot of the game, you know, because he made so many, right? And it was like, how do you do that? You know, aren't you afraid of missing, you know? And he was like, no, man. Why would I be afraid of missing a shot that I haven't even taken yet?
Mm.
Why would I be afraid of missing a shot that I haven't even taken yet? Think about that, right?
Totally.
It's hard because we're all afraid.
I love this conversation.
Me too. I'm a fan. I like talking, man. I love people, bro. Like I love talking to people. I love getting to know people. I love talking to people that might disagree with me. You know, there's two quotes. I have them on my wall. You can't really see them. I have two posters on my wall. One is Martin Luther King, you know, and it's darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. You know, that quote from him. And then it's the man in the arena quote from Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
You know, you got to love. You have to love. You know, you have to. So that's all people, you know, every single one of them. Like, God damn, this is really hard to say, and people might hate me for it, but we have to find, and I hate this, and I don't hate this person. This person deserves to pay for what he did, and all of those police officers in Minnesota deserve to pay for what they did to Mr. Floyd. But we need to be able to find some love for every individual in the world. You know, we need to, because this hatred is not going to get us anywhere. You know, it is not. You know, and it's so hard to do. I get it. We all want to curb stomp those dudes, right? We all do. I don't want to put my knee on his neck. I want to curb stomp him. I get it. That's where we all are right now. But we have to move off of that, right? We have to move off of that. And then the second quote, man, you got to keep stepping in that arena so that I'll read the end of it. You know, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. That's my worst fear, man. That's my worst fear, is to God damn, to not try. What would that be like?
Yeah. You lost the fight with yourself, that you won't even step up and be measured.
Just to give up for good, right? We all have these moments of quit. That's why you have people, right? That's why you have love. They pick you up, go again, and then they make you, right? And then, you know, you're going to have to be there for someone. Come on, get up, you know?
That's excellent. I'm going to tie the knot there. I think that was, you laid it out there.
I'm rough. I'm raw around the edges. I say dumb shit, you know, with my, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, man, we got to love each other. You know, we got to love each other. We can't, you know, and we got to just keep walking one foot in front of the other. Be a little more skillful every day.
Hate is lazy. It's a cliche. It's an excuse.
It's so easy to hate these cops right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy. The hard part is to find some love.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying not punish, and I'm not saying not hate what they did, and I'm not saying not hate maybe the people they are, you know, but we gotta find some. You know, they deserve to be punished. We definitely need change. That is all true. Every single part of that is true. And I'm Black. I'm a Black Jew. There's not two groups that have been persecuted more than me. And I did not vote for Donald Trump. Okay. So like, I do not have I am not out there like that. We gotta find, and I don't have it. Now, don't misconstrue that I have love for these people right now. I don't. I have hate for them. That is not correct. That is not the most skillful way to go through this. I know what the answer is. I don't have it right now. You know, like I can't do it, but I can't. I don't want to say can't. I am not doing it, but I know where it needs to go.
But it'll come out of you when it's time. It'll come out of you the right.
I'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I talked about my friend that died, you know,
Mm-hmm.
He overdosed. I was really mad at him. I was really, really I was so mad at him. And this is going to sound all hippy dippy. So, you know, if you don't, you know, take it for what you want. But I was getting a massage, you know, a couple weeks afterwards. And the lady, she was like pushing on my upper back, you know, and it really hurt, like super, super painful. I was like, and almost to the point where I had to tell her to stop, you know, and I like intense massage. And then like the pain went immediately to nausea. And I was like, oh my, I'm gonna vomit, you know, holy shit. Like, you know, again, I was like, I gotta run to the bathroom. And then the second the nausea passed, I was a little kid again, like 10 to 12 years old. And we used to sit on his couch in the basement, and we were just sitting there again, just the two of us. And it wasn't a memory. I was there. And it was 30 seconds. We didn't say a fucking word to each other. We were just watching TV like we always watch TV, sitting in our same spots, doing our same things that we always did when we were kids. And then like I got to say goodbye. And I got to say like in that moment without words, I love you, you know. I ain't mad at him anymore.
I love that. Eliot, thank you so much for
Steve. Thank you, man.
Dude, I appreciate your energy and your presence. It's powerful.
I love it, man. I love this. You know, this is what I call the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love to spread the gospel. You know, and it's whatever, and it's not religious, but it is religious.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So people can find your book on Amazon, The Gospel of Fire.
Yeah.
You've got a website,
EliotMarshall.com. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got 7 schools there in Denver.
Yes.
Yeah.
All currently closed, so don't try to go to one now.
But they're
there. We'll be back. We'll be back strong because we know how to fight.
Eliot, thank you so much, man.
Thanks. And if also my podcast, right? My podcast, The Gospel of Fire as well, you know, which is, you can get to it from my website and man, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I love it.
All right.